Hello and welcome to part 2 of being a singing teacher. If you haven't watched part 1, I highly recommend that you go and watch part 1 first and then come back here and we can continue the journey. Otherwise, let's look at what are the 7 questions I think that you should be answering yourself before you or in the process of planning to become a singing teacher. So the first one is very simply why. Why do you want to teach? So you might have a financial reason, it might be a lifestyle reason, it might be because you really love teaching, it might be because people have been asking you to teach and you've realised that it's going to be useful to have an extra way of earning a stream of income. Some things that I definitely want you to be considering is, do you actually enjoy teaching? And I know sometimes we don't know that until we start it. And I think it's important to know that there's lots of different types of settings that we can be teaching and not everything's going to suit us. But definitely if you don't like teaching, then you probably shouldn't be a teacher. And the reason why I say that is because I think that there are many people who've been incredibly damaged from teachers who haven't really wanted to be teachers, and then they take it out on their students and end up leaving lots of scars and beliefs that hold that person back. So if that's you, I would rather that you went off and found some other kind of a job or another kind of way of earning income that would suit your personality better. So do you enjoy teaching is got to be one of the things that you want to be considering. And I know it might take a little time to figure that out, but definitely if it's something you're not enjoying when you start, first of all explore, is that because you're in the wrong setting, or is it because actually you just don't enjoy that process of teaching another person? Another thing in the opposite direction is, do you enjoy learning? Because in order to be a great teacher, you need to be open to the idea that you're constantly going to be developing and learning. Things change, we can't know everything. I still feel like I'm learning, and I've been teaching for over 20 years. And I'm just excited, when I find out about new things. And it will benefit not only yourself and your teaching, but also, of course, your students. The other thing that you may want to consider is, are you happy to run a business? I mean, you can go into teaching and just work for someone else. There's absolutely that is an option. There's various stage schools and performing arts places that are looking for teachers. Sometimes there's studios where they have different singing teachers that all work for the one studio, and that business finds the students for you, does all the marketing, and then pays the singing teachers that work for them. So that's also an option. But most of the time you're going to end up running your own business as a singing teacher. And so if that's the case, are you going to be okay doing that? You might need to go and get some more training and education around running your own business, but at the end of the day, you're happy to be a business owner. The other thing that you'll need to consider is, do you have enough experience and knowledge to be charging for teaching services? Now, you'll know that, but I would encourage you to think about all the experiences that you've had, as well as the training and the education and the qualifications. Some of it might be directly related to singing, something might be more related to music or performing, might be because you're in musical theatre, and so you might have acting and dancing as well. Might be that you're a singer-songwriter, so you'll have that. Maybe you're a session singer. You might also have another kind of qualification or training or experience that you can add in. So maybe, you've done some sound production work, or maybe, like in my case, you've had another profession that you can bring in. There's all sorts of things that we can bring in to increase our value. And there's always going to be some form of value that you bring to a student. But if you are just getting started as a singer, maybe you've just finished college, it probably would be a good idea to go out and get a few years of experience performing and singing before you start teaching. Now, the reality is I can't make you do that, but I think that in order for a student to really benefit, it would be good to have a teacher that's actually gone out and actually had some experience first. So I talked about, looking also at your knowledge, your experience, your training, your qualifications, any skills that you can bring either to the business or to teaching. And it might be worth sitting down and noting all these things down and seeing what could you potentially blend in to your services that might give you some sort of unique value that someone else, another singing teacher, doesn't have. You also need to be organised, you need to be reliable. So you need to be organised in terms of scheduling people in for lessons and also getting your invoices together, getting paid, running the business, doing the bookkeeping, the accounting, and paying the bills, all of that sort of thing. So being organised and reliable, I think, is an important component of teaching. And then also, do you have the time to commit to teaching regularly? So I talked a little bit about that in the last session, that sometimes people are still out touring, gigging, performing, or maybe in a show. So they're mingling their performance in with teaching, and that's absolutely fine as long as your students know that that's how it's going to be. And it might be that you say, well, actually, I'll always have Monday and Tuesday available. My gigs don't happen until sort of later in the week. And so you make sure that you fit your students in around there. The next question is, who do you want to teach? It's a huge market out there, believe it or not. You want to be considering age range. So teaching young children versus older children versus teenagers, early teenagers versus late teenagers versus young people versus middle age versus elderly. There's all sorts of different things that you'll have to consider when you're teaching those different groups. So is there, at this point in time, a particular group that you think you'd like to start with? So don't feel like you have to go out and be available to teach everybody and anyone, in any style or, any level of singer. Why not just start with where you feel comfortable? That might be with kids, or it might be with teenagers, or it might be, if you're a singer-songwriter, it might be with people similar to you. Think also about what level of experience you want your student to have achieved already. Are you looking for total beginners? Are you looking for people who have already got some experience? Or are you looking to work with professionals? And then also, of course, you want to be considering the genre. Now, one of my bugbears is singing teachers who say, I teach anybody and anything, and it's like, actually, if someone really wants to learn musical theatre or jazz or gospel or rock or pop, and classical, of course, then you really need to have had experience in that area. It's not that you could have definitely, like, for instance, I can work with musical theatre singers to get their technique right, but when it comes to building repertoire, getting their portfolio together for auditioning and all that sort of thing, they really need to go to someone who has an expertise in that area. So think about your personal experience, your work experience, and also your interest and also your knowledge. I mean, I have a degree in jazz education, so I can very easily work with someone who wants to go down that pathway, because I can teach them about improvisation and understanding how to scat, and as well as putting together, the appropriate repertoire as a jazz vocalist. So when you're working with children, it's a slightly different way of giving a lesson. They tend not to have the concentration that adults do. And are you happy to do that? I found out very early in my career that children were not my bag. But I, had to give it a go first. And then after a while, maybe a couple of years, I just thought, you know what, I'm not doing the children any favors by being their teacher. There are plenty of teachers out there who love teaching kids and who are very good at it. And so I made sure that I could recommend, good teachers to them if anybody approached me. You might be interested in the theory side and helping people through exams. So, children or teenagers who are doing different grades or who may be studying A-levels if you're here in the UK. So that might be a particular interest that you have, so you can add that in. Most children start around 8 or 9, but occasionally they'll start younger. And it's actually okay to teach young children. You just don't want to necessarily spend lots of time on technique. It might be more about musicality and fun and singing songs. But that's definitely a different type of teaching to working with older students. So you might be interested in working with hobbyists, adults who want to maybe sing in a choir or do some singer-songwriter work, or maybe get into a panto or a local production. You might want to work with artists, so artist singers versus working singers. So an artist singer is someone who's doing their own stuff, and a working singer is more like a session singer, someone who does function work, backing vocals, working in the recording studio, that kind of singer. And then, of course, there's also working with the older voice, and it might be as a way of helping, the elderly and create a community and do something that's really joyful. But it also can help maintain the voice. As you get older, the voice will deteriorate and get weaker, and having singing lessons will help strengthen it. So where do you want to teach? Are you going to teach from home? Do you have a space where you can do that? Do you need some equipment? Do you need to make sure that people who are living with you or living beside you are okay with you making this kind of noise? It's obviously going to be cheaper to do that because your overheads will be lower. So you could set lower rates when you do that. If you want to teach somewhere external, you might need to pay for rent, whether that's hourly or per day, or maybe you actually get your own place that you rent out. You might share with someone else, whether that's another music teacher or singing teacher or something completely different. So there's a variety of different ways to do that. But obviously then we need to think about overheads. So you've got a rent to pay, you might have to pay, for utilities, there might be a business rate that you have to pay, etc. And then that needs to be included in your pricing. You might want to go and teach in a school. So it might be just a regular primary school or high school, or it might be a stage school, and you go and teach in that setting. Obviously then you probably won't be in control of your rates. You would have to accept whatever the rates they were offering. You might also think that you'll go and do the session actually in the person's home. So traveling to the client will mean that you have to think about travel time and travel costs, and do they have a piano or keyboard, or do you have to bring one with you? So when do you want to teach? This is particular if you're working with kids. If you wanted to work with kids, but you are only available during the day, then that's going to be a problem, isn't it? Because they're going to be at school. So thinking about, well, if I want to teach kids or, with children or teenagers who are at school, I'm going to need to be able to teach after school hours, maybe early evenings, maybe even weekends. And is that what you want to do? And you need to also consider that in the holidays, they may not be having their lessons. And so how are you going to maintain your income during that period? And thinking as well about how long your lessons will be. Will they be 20 minutes for younger people? Might be half an hour, might be an hour. So you might have to play around and experiment with that a little bit. How will you get started? So if you've never taught before, how are you going to get started? Quite often I will suggest that people start by offering free lessons, say 3 free lessons in order to get a testimonial or just to practice. And then you might say after 3 or 4 or 5 lessons, I'm going to start charging. I'm going to give you a special price because you've been so wonderful and willing to let me learn with you on you. And so you might have a special price for those people who, if they want to continue having lessons, and quite often they do. It might be that you create packages, and just say, oh, you'll get 5 lessons for the price of 4, or some other kind of package discount. you need to think about how you're going to get new students coming in. So you might already have some people who've expressed an interest. It might be, a friend is wanting to have singing lessons for their child, or when you're out on a gig, you've had people come up and say, oh, do you teach lessons? So start off with the people that you know. Put it out there that you're starting to teach and see what happens. And then you could also get into a little bit of marketing. There's Google AdWords, and there's also Facebook, which can be very targeted. But you will need to go and learn how to do that, or you might just get someone to help you, either if you've got a friend who knows and understands about these things, or there might be a course that you can do that will help you understand how to get started. And in fact, Google have a lot of education, and it's free, around setting up Google Ads and things like that. But you'll need to do some research first to find out where are the sort of people that you want to teach, where do they hang out? Where do they get this kind of information? Do they want a leaflet or a business card? Should you leave something, in a place like if you go out to a singer-songwriter night, could you leave some cards there? Or could you go to your local music store and leave some leaflets there? Or could you put up a little poster in your local library or at the deli on the notice board? So there's an easy way of getting started by just starting small, starting with a couple of students. And the other thing is that if you're giving a really good service, your students will pass on the message to other people, and word of mouth will help you increase your student load. So understand that it takes time to build a business. You're not going to open up your doors and suddenly everyone's flooding in, not unless you've done all the marketing before that. Do some research with regard to pricing. So it's very easy nowadays to get online and find out how much are people charging. You might do a little sneaky email to someone local who has a similar background to you and pretend that you're a student or potential student, or you might get a friend to do it. Or you might find that actually those rates are available online. In the UK, musicteachers.co.uk, I'm pretty sure that people quote their prices there. So that could be a good starting point with regard to deciding your fee. So what is your current experience? Sit down and make a list of your qualifications, your skills, your experiences, and also talk to people who might be interested in having singing lesson, and ask them what would they expect from a singing teacher? What kind of knowledge, skills, experience, qualifications would they expect from a singing teacher? Interestingly enough, most people don't look for singing teacher qualifications. A lot of teachers want singing teacher qualifications because it gives them more confidence to go out and teach and to charge and to justify it. But quite often, potential students won't even ask that question. So what makes you unique? What kind of value do you bring that might be different to what another singing teacher might be able to bring? Everybody has something different. It'll be your age, it'll be your experience, it'll be your interest, maybe your qualifications, what else you bring to the table, and your personality, of course. So don't worry too much if there's other singing teachers around you. Just focus on you and what you've got to offer. Quite often people will come to a certain teacher because they just like them, because they've connected with them, and that's the only reason that they've made a choice to come to you over someone else. So focus on maybe contributing where you can to being helpful, like on forums, and write some helpful advice. Don't be sort of overselling yourself or anything like that, because that can be annoying if you're being spammy. But just offer good value to other people, and quite often they'll turn to you and they'll find out more about you. Hopefully you've got you'll have a website set up as well, or some information somewhere on social media about what you're doing, and then people will naturally then want to call you and find out more. So the seventh question is, where do you want to take it? I think it's important that when we set off down a pathway that we have got a sense of what goal, as opposed to just sort of floundering around and hoping it'll work out. Now, you may change that goal at some point, but if you know where you want to take it, then it means that you are going to be much more likely to notice when there are certain opportunities that come in your way that tie in with that goal. It also helps you understand what you need to do and experience and qualifications that you might need to take in order to help you get there. So when I started teaching, even though I didn't have very much experience from that point of view, I knew eventually that I wanted to teach at higher education level. And this is why I made the decision to go and study as much as I did, because I wanted to make sure that I had the qualifications as well as the experience in order to, if that opportunity came up, I could take it. And that's exactly what happened. 10 years later, it did take 10 years, but I wasn't ready prior to that, if I'm honest. Somebody was looking for a tutor for the music school, and I got recommended. So I went in as a vocal tutor. And then while I was there, the head of vocals was leaving, and because I already had a lot of the qualifications, even though I didn't have experience as head of vocals, I'd actually managed in a nursing setting, and also obviously I had a lot of higher education experience as well. Then I became kind of a logical choice to then take over as head of vocals. So that was a combination of, preparation meets luck in order for me to succeed in that way. So this job can take you, all sorts of places. It might be that you end up working as a private teacher from your home, and you're very happy to do that, until the end of time. But you might actually eventually want to work with more professional singers. So how do you make sure that you've got the qualification and experience and know-how to be able to do that? It might be that you want to teach in a school. You might want to go into classroom teaching a bit eventually. You might want to work with artists who are touring. You might want to work in vocal rehabilitation, or you might want to work with the corporate training setting. You might want to run a choir but have, a vocal health and well-being sector. You might be interested in musical theatre coaching, helping people with their auditions and preparing for roles. You might want to work with professional or non-professional singers. You might want to work in the film world. There is just so many different variations for this job. And if you've got a sense of which direction you want to go in, you're more likely to be able to achieve that, because you'll notice the opportunities as they come along, and you'll hopefully take them as well, and you'll make sure that you're getting the experience and training and education that you need to ensure that you're prepared to take your pathway in that direction. So that's it. These are the 7 questions. I hope thinking about these are helpful to you and understanding where you want to take your teaching and how you're going to get started, and the kind of people that you will be focusing on to start teaching in the beginning. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and I'll be talking a little bit more about the sort of things that a singing teacher needs to know in order to be a great singing teacher.